Trainer Podcast, episode 180.
Let's go.
All right, we're going to get right into it because I've got something I got to do in like 1 hour exactly. I got to leave pretty much in like
I was like
1 hour and 20 minutes.
I was like, wait a second.
Okay. So we're going to get into it here. So, okay.
Good.
So last podcast episode we did, great podcast. We just sparked some interesting conversation in the comments. So today we're going to do basically a reaction to all of the comments from the last episode. There's not a ton of them. 10 comments or so, something like that. So we'll get into these, couple questions, couple comments, couple concerns. We'll get into all of it.
Let's hear it.
Okay.
Give it to me.
So, we'll start off here. This is from Linda.
Hi, Linda.
Linda said, "Love your video. I have a new German Shepherd from working line and a very, very busy dog and hard to deal with at times. I do use an e-collar when I need to. Have also used a prong collar when he goes to obedience school. Have had good results with both. I also work on recalls with a retractable leash for recall training."
A retractable leash?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I use one every now and then.
Okay.
I've changed my stance a touch on retractable leashes.
Really? Okay.
A touch, right? So for the longest time, like when I first got into dog training, retractable leashes were the absolute taboo for dog trainers. Like, you don't touch it. Your clients come in with it. You, like, steal it from them and burn it, you know? Like, you don't touch them, right? And then I started seeing little by little, you know, trainers kind of have one here and there. And they kind of, you know, like, and ultimately what it came down to is the hold on.
Oh.
Hold on. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Retractable leashes are a good tool when used properly.
There you go.
I may have to, just for consistency's sake, change my stance on retractable leashes.
Yeah.
Dude, retractable leashes are just a good tool. And my issue with them has always been the people using them improperly, but actually that is an issue with the person. And frankly, if the retractable leashes didn't exist, I'm using my same logic here. If the retractable leash didn't exist, they would be doing the same irresponsible, annoying fucking things with a long line, with no leash at all, right? Like,
You're right.
So, all right.
Yeah.
They're a good tool.
Man,
and here, what are they a good tool for? They're a good tool for giving your dog the ability to go off, practice essentially being off leash, but not have this leash you're getting fucking tangled up with. I mean, honestly, like I haven't used a traditional long line it's been a while, honestly.
Yeah.
Not that there's no value to them. They're still good. I think the benefit of the actual long line over the retractable leash is if you get a really thin one, very lightweight one, they could actually drag it and not have that like sense of truly being connected to the person. You can get a little bit further. Like your longest retractable leashes are like 25 feet or so. Yeah. You know? So no, they're a good tool. I use them a lot. I think I've said it before. One of my favorite uses of the retractable leash is when we're teaching like the come command or the healing, right? A lot of people have this bad habit with the leash of like when the dog starts getting ahead, you watch their arm do this, right? You watch it do this. And what happens is they're constantly accidentally pulling on the dog to try to get the dog to back up instead of just correcting where they need to correct, right? Where with the retractable leash, every time they try to do that, it doesn't do anything, right? It just it retracts, right? Or contracts, I believe, So it has a lot of benefit for helping people get past the pulling on their dog constantly.
Okay.
That's my favorite use for it is it really is the bridge for training like an off-leash heel, but you still have that ability to quickly lock in it, where if you're doing it with a long line and having a long line drag, you can kind of step on it if you need to, but you can't get quite as close to triggers as you would like to because you can't grab it fast enough, right? While still practicing that off-leash training. So I like them. You know, they're a good tool. I use it quite a bit now. That being said, like give it a quick plug. The only retractable leash that I use is the Flexi Lead Giant. The Giant. It is like rated. It's like their highest rated one for like tension
cable.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the motor in it is probably, or whatever you call it, to lock it. Really, really sturdy. The actual cord on it, I mean, it's like a regular nylon leash, basically, super heavy duty and stuff. And it just feels like it's built nicely. Where you see a lot of these junky ones, they have literally the string that comes out of it. So
I like when you like hit the button, you kind of feel it like lag.
yeah. Okay, so anyways, that's section 1 of this comment. Yeah. We're just gonna dig into people's comments here. So I was reading this, and I think I replied back to it because there were a couple things that when I read comments that just like as a dog trainer stand out to me, right? So obviously this individual has a working line German Shepherd, a very busy dog, meaning the dog constantly wants to do shit, obviously, and it's hard to deal with at times. So let's say this was, and this person isn't like, hey, give me help, David, right? But like, I'm just going to give unsolicited help right now for the sake of making a podcast.
Yes.
Right? So my first question I look at when I read a comment like that, like let's say a client reached out to me and said this in the opening statement of their contact form. My first question would be, okay, when the dog gets busy, what about it is hard to deal with? I've said this a million times.
Yeah.
You know, general energy is not generally hard to deal with as long as the dog is dispersing it into the correct things or not dispersing it into the incorrect things. Was that not rolling?
I don't think it was.
Really?
Yeah.
Bro.
Damn it.
Bro.
I know.
Jesus Christ.
You rushed me, Ari. I'm sorry.
So I would ask the question of, what's the dog doing when it gets busy, right? Most dogs, they get busy, and then we're constantly, because they're busy, we're constantly like, hey, don't go over there. 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 And that gets really hard to deal with and really annoying. But it's because when they go over there, they jump on the fucking counter. When they go over there, they get in the trash can, et cetera, et cetera. So let's stop those things. But that leads into statement number 2. I do use an e-collar when I need to. What do you think about that one?
Use an e-collar when she needs to?
No, it says, I do use an e-collar when I need to.
Like, that's is this a user error kind of thing?
Maybe. I don't know. I'm just reading into things right now, right?
Yeah,
but I hear
really
I do use an e-collar when I need to. Usually what that tells me is you're being reactive with the e-collar, right? So when I need it, my dog's getting really busy and annoying right now. Let's put the e-collar
then you
on.
put it on. Okay.
And listen, Linda, I promise I'm not picking on you. And to everybody else that I'm going to talk about in this, I'm not picking on anybody. I'm just making content.
Yeah.
We're making content.
We're just making content.
Right? Use the e-collar even when you don't need to.
Yeah.
Right? That's one of the biggest mistakes I have clients make, right, is when they have a dog and the dog is fresh out of training and they think the dog is really good because when they put the e-collar on, the dog behaves. So they start taking the e-collar off all the time. And the dog does good for a little bit, but then realizes they don't have the collar on, and then they start misbehaving. Then we go, oh, we got to put the e-collar back on, right? And you create this pattern of when the dog misbehaves, e-collar comes out and goes on, right? Which does a couple of things. One, it creates a clear contrast of behavior with tool on versus behavior without tool on, which is not what we want. That's how you train collar wiseness, right? Thing number 2, if historically you're putting the e-collar on, and as soon as you put it on, you're using it because you're needing it in that moment, you're training a negative association with the collar as well, right? Collar goes on, we use the collar. Collar goes on, we use the collar, right? I want it to be a neutral thing. I want it to be like anything else. Your dog's flat collar that they wear around all fucking day long. Your dog ain't thinking twice about that collar because it's just always there. Right? They're not associating them getting stung by a bee in the yard with the flat collar being on, or their negative encounter with another dog at the dog park with that collar being on, because it's just always on.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are so concerned about creating negative associations with these tools. That's how you avoid it.
Yeah.
Right? So I've said it a million times before. Now listen, I'm understanding that as you progress through training, they may not need to wear it 24/7, but predict the places where you would need it and always put it on whether you actually need it or not in those situations. So my big 3, people coming over the house, going off leash anywhere, and going anywhere in public. So anywhere aside my house, right? And because I always put it on in those situations, regardless of if I actually need it or not, I'm never caught off guard. I rarely ever need to actually use it. I don't ever put the collar on being reactionary to my dogs. And the collar is just a neutral nothing thing to them.
Yep.
It's not correlated to anything aside from it's just a fucking collar.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Just so, like, for the normal person, just anytime you're going to go outside or anything like that, that's when you just
pop it on.
Just pop it on. Okay.
Next sentence. Have also used a prong collar when he goes to obedience class.
Also uses a prong collar when he goes to obedience class.
Have also used a prong collar when he goes to obedience class.
This is kind of the same thing with the
Same fucking thing.
e-collar, right? Yeah.
Right? Why are you only using it when he goes to obedience class?
Use it when he's out of obedience class.
Yeah, right? Because, like, same deal. Like, 1,000,001 clients come to me and they say, David, my dog listens so good in this training session, but then I go home and they don't listen as good, right?
Yeah.
What are you doing different at home versus at the training class, right?
Right.
Like, I mean, the dog listens. This training class was a neutral place at some point, or our session we did at Edgewater was a neutral place at some point.
Yeah.
So that means you're doing something different. A lot of people, I see it. Well, I don't do as many one-on-ones as I used to. I used to see it all the time. People would come into their training session. They get into the facility. They get the prong collar out. They get the e-collar on. They get the treat pouch, right? They got all the things, and they're fucking ready to go. And then they're on it. They nail it, right? They're like, boom, 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 boom. Dog's listening great. Doing awesome. Off leash. Boom, boom. And then we go, all right, great. Session's over. Time to go home. And they're like, okay. Take the prong collar off, take the e-collar off, put the treat pouch away, right? And then the dog goes fucking pulling him out the door, right? To go back home.
Like, oh.
Right? So it's just like,
Yeah.
that you don't create the contrast. It's the same thing as all these others, right? Don't create the contrast, right? Make whatever you're doing in your training classes that's making the dog listen, right? And making them well behaved, that's just real life, right? It's like, it's the same thing. I'm beating a dead horse with it, right? But we'll do a session with people and it's like, we'll work doorway manners for the whole fucking session, right? And the dog will do so well with it. And then it's like session's over and they go to do the last door going out to their fucking car and it's a disaster. It's like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Do it the same way we just did it for the last fucking 45 minutes.
Yeah. And you see people like they'll like, let's say you're doing like one a week lessons and like you'll see that they'll have like a problem with something like the day after that you worked on, but then they're like, oh, well, we'll just wait till that they kind of push it off till their next session. It's like they do like just kind of put like a wall up between what a session is and what real life is. Yeah.
And listen, I could say that some trainers need to take some responsibility for this because I know when I first started getting into this, I never corrected people on that. It was just like, come in, get your dog geared up, let's start working, right? And I didn't do an effective enough job of coaching them through how to then take that and take it home with them,
Yeah.
So we could start there and put the responsibility on ourselves as trainers to coach people through making those adjustments and catering our training that we do at the facility to real life things, right? So the pictures you're working at the facility, you need to make sure it can be replicated identically back home as well, right? And if not, you need to look at changing your lesson plan a little bit with stuff. Yeah, she said she had good results with both, which, again, further leads to, and again, you may already be doing these things.
Yeah.
Forgive me if you are, right? But that leads me to believe, you're having great results, so apply it to home, right? She also works on recalls with a retractable leash for recall training. Combine all this stuff, right? So let's say you're just using the e-collar when you need it. You're just using the prong collar at obedience class, and you're just using your retractable leash with no other tools for recall training. Combine all of these things, right? E-collar, retractable leash, prong collar. Make those a part of your day-to-day, right? Use them all the time, right? Whether you're working recall, whether you're working at your obedience class, whether you're out and about, whether you're in the house, and you'll probably see really great results. So, Linda, that is my unsolicited advice.
Mesh it all together. Use it all the time.
Mesh it together. All right, moving on. Blue Sky Dogs said, because we were talking about the tool, right? Good tool when used properly. Said, it's not the tool on the dog, but the tool on the other end of the leash. I like it.
That's funny.
I like it.
Yeah, that's a good one.
You are correct. It's the tool on the other end of the leash. Next one. Twat Waffle Whitney is the name of this person.
All right. What is
Twat Waffle Whitney said, oh my gosh, that last video was hilarious. In reference to the dog not wanting to get in the car.
Right.
Getting the dog in the car, right? Like,
oh my God.
Sometimes I think to myself, damn, I am really fucking happy that I'd probably actually interact with the type of people that leave the comments. Like, they leave on that video being so upset that I made a dog jump in the car.
Right.
Like, in person, I'm so happy that I don't have to interact with them very much. But it makes me wonder also, like, if I'm at the park and I just, like, make my dog jump into the car, like, are there people at the park that are looking at me like, ugh, ugh.
Can you believe he made his dog get in his car?
Jesus. And imagine being that concerned about what other people are doing all the time. All the time.
I couldn't imagine.
Couldn't even imagine. I was in a lesson the other day. We were at Edgewater, and the client looked at me and they said, because there was like a dog freaking out walking by us. It was a great distraction. And they were like, do you just want to hand business cards out to everybody? Or does that just drive you crazy when you see people doing that? And I was like, not at all.
Yeah.
Not one fucking bit. Literally, not one fucking bit.
Yeah.
If anything, I'm happy when it happens because the dog I'm working with, it's a great distraction for. I don't give a shit what anybody else is doing with their dog. I have no interest in, like, it doesn't impact me, right?
Yeah.
Unless they're letting their dog literally run all the way over to me. Like, yeah, I'll stop it. I care about that, obviously. But anything else, I don't give a fuck what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, really, like, couldn't care less.
Right.
You know? And they were like, yeah, but, like, don't you know you could help them? I was like, there are 8 million resources out there of how these people can find help if they actually want it.
Yeah.
They'll find it eventually, right?
Yeah.
When you care enough to make the changes with your dog, you will find it eventually.
Yeah.
Right? There was a listener. I don't even know if this person still listens to us anymore because I think I ruffled their feathers a lot in an episode a while ago.
Okay.
So there was a regular commenter of our podcast. Used to leave a lot of like long comments, stuff like that. And one day they left a comment on here. And listen, if you're listening, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to upset you. We're just making content.
Yeah.
So I say, we're just making content.
Yeah.
Right?
That's all we're doing.
It's social media.
Yeah.
Come on. And they left a comment saying something along the lines of, like, nothing against us, but they were like, oh yeah, like my neighbor's dog is out of control and it gets my dog riled up.
Okay.
And I went over there and I said, I can help you with this and blah, blah, blah. And then that person, didn't, like, they weren't interested and were really rude back to me and stuff like that. And whatever, they were just sharing the story basically.
Yeah.
And I just commented back. I was like, yeah, that's why I don't give unsolicited advice. Aside from now we're making content.
So what you're saying, your unsolicited advice about giving unsolicited advice.
Yeah. So I said, that's why I don't give unsolicited advice, which is true. Like, in real life, when we're not making content, right? Like, like, I'm not giving unsolicited. It doesn't impact me, right? Yeah. If you want help, you'll find the help.
Yeah.
Right? And then and basically it turned into this like 14 comment back and forth, like, of them being like, well, what? You're saying that if you saw somebody abusing a dog, you wouldn't step in? I was like,
yeah, right.
no, that's not, like, come on, like, let's be real, right? And then I explained, I was like, what you described that you were going over, because you said like he was like, the dog was on a prong collar and he was like correcting the dog on the prong collar and it wasn't working. And she's like, I can help you fix this, right? Like, I was like, what you described didn't sound like a dog getting abused.
Yeah, he wasn't like beating the dog to death.
And it just turned into this back, like, you don't blah, blah, blah. And at one point I was just like, what's the problem here? Like, what, like, I don't understand the issue. Like, you're getting like so defensive over, you just shouldn't have given unsolicited advice to this. Like, leave them alone. Let them do what they want to do. Right. Like, and then, and they got really upset about that. And then they've never commented on anything since. So.
Yeah. This is like, Cameron and I, he was like showing me something the other day at the gym when we were together. And this guy, this old guy, he looks like he was like training some other lady. He's like, oh, you got to do this for him, like, while I was doing it. And I was like, dude, shut the fuck up. Bro. Like when, unsolicited like advice, it's like, I don't want that.
They don't want it.
Yeah.
Right. Two, like, I think I hear like Jeff Gellman talk on his podcast a lot about, he's like, are you going to walk up to somebody that's like grossly overweight and tell them, hey, you're fat, I can help you lose weight? Like, no, you're not. Like, it's again, everybody knows how to find solutions for their problems if they need it. And listen, if they don't know how to find it and they're just like desperately like, I need help, but I don't know where to go for it. Yeah. There's a million places they can go to say, I don't even know if you could help me or not, but I need help with this thing.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, there's a way that they invite you in.
Yeah, and like past that, the other thing too is like if you are going to give unsolicited advice, which I never recommend that you actually do so, like you better be like the best at what you do if you're going to do that, and like absolutely be able to like guarantee that you could actually help that individual, which I also think is a bit of like an egotistical thing to like kind of try to do at that moment.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I don't know, whatever. I just don't do it. I don't give unsolicited advice.
Yeah.
What did that stem from? That stemmed from talking about people watching getting in the car, I think, right?
It did.
And then us seeing reactive dogs out on the walk.
Yeah.
And then this individual on YouTube trying to give their neighbor advice, and then me just not giving unsolicited advice and losing a follower because of it.
Yeah.
Sorry about it. All right. Moving on here. Okay. This one is from, I don't know, AVUOROW3084.
What was the last one's name again?
Twat Waffle Whitney. All right. So this person said, awesome video. Loved this style a lot. Very interested in hearing a pod or segment about the sheriffing, policing personality type of dog, like the one mentioned in the multi-dog home that was having fights. I think it's something not touched on a lot, especially when concerning multi-dog homes that erupt in fights for seemingly no reason. I think a lot of people don't understand bullying for dogs when it doesn't involve straightforward, discernible aggression. Great video. Yeah. Yeah. The police officering, which we just call it that. Like, I don't even know if the dog in their head is like, I need to sheriff this town. You know?
Y'all calm
There is a snake in your boot. Yeah, I don't even know if it's so much they're conscious of that, but it, like, from the outside looking, as a human perspective, it looks like the police officer.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
Right?
Yeah.
It feels like the police officering. I am a firm believer with dogs like that. There are some dogs that are a little... So if you look at, like, a household, right? And it could either be one dog and a couple humans, couple dogs, you know, a lot of dogs, couple humans. It could be whatever, right? This is where you get into like the dominance conversation, right? Like there is a hierarchy no matter what. I think every layman can look at their household and kind of like outline they could see who kind of is in charge of what with things, right?
Yeah.
And anytime as a human, we are not actively in control over our pack, if every dog is going to try to assume that role, right? And particularly when you have more dominant than other dogs, right? They are going to sheriff or police officer or assume that role in a way that's much more visible than with others, right? So I am a big believer that when you have dogs that are sheriffing or policing other dogs, meaning like one dog is doing something they shouldn't do, so they run over there and try to, you know, intimidate them away or steal toys constantly, or if two of the dogs are playing too rough, they run over and try to stop the play or whatever it may be. They're not even conscious of, oh, this is an improper behavior that mom and dad wouldn't like, so I've got to go handle it kind of thing.
Yeah.
They're simply looking at it of, I don't like this thing. I don't like this thing. Maybe it's disturbing me trying to rest right now. Maybe it's, I feel like that's my toy over there. Or maybe it's just, that's a really unstable energy and it ruffles me the wrong way, right? Could be any of those types of things. You don't address that personality by literally addressing those things, right? You address that personality by figuring out, why does this dog feel like it needs to be setting so many boundaries on its own? Probably because one of two things. One, it's not seeing you address those things. And two, it is not being held to a standard of being compliant to somebody else ever.
Yeah.
Right? It is never being put in a position where it is being told, I don't like what you're doing right now, from a figure that they are perceiving to be more dominant than them. In this case, the human. We want that to be, obviously. Right? So that's how we solve it. Like this dog in particular I was referring to in the last podcast, she's like a Neapolitan Mastiff. And she just she was the good dog in their mind, right? She's a little older than the rest of them. She never really had like aggression issues per se, you know, she just like was a bit of a brat in the house. And like when she would get on the couch, she wouldn't get off when she was asked to. Like, and she would like steal toy. You know what I mean? Like she just did a bunch of things that were just like kind of like not horrible, but it's just like she was just asserting control and dominance constantly, right? She did what she wanted to do, right? So we started setting rules, right? On the walk. She was kind of a hot mess on the walk. Boom, you got to be better on the walk, right? She was horrible about getting off of the couch, right? But you got to get off the fucking couch when I tell you to.
Yeah.
Right? Like just little things like that where you could practice asserting control, shifts the mindset in the house and puts you in a position where the dog starts looking to you for direction and not feeling so,
yeah,
you know,
head honcho,
constantly just honcho in the house.
Yeah.
So it's pretty simple. I mean, obviously, and how can this create problems? Well, if your dog is constantly trying to assert dominance on your other dogs, which is literally what it is, that will eventually be met with the wrong dog that doesn't like it and starts challenging that dog back and can turn into fights then.
Yeah.
Right? We don't want our dog... Listen, we want our dogs to be able to set boundaries with each other over reasonable things. Like if they're playing too hard and the one gets a little too much and the other says, hey, back off a little bit, right? Or, you know, even little minor resource related things, you know, not that we want our dogs resource guarding things, but a little bit of like, hey, you're coming into my space to try to take my toy. Don't do that. Now we should help out with those things as best as we can. But like those are like reasonable boundaries dogs would set with each other.
Yeah.
But things like we see it with the sheriffing, we'll literally see it so extreme. Like one dog is laying on the couch, the other two on the other side of the fucking room playing with each other, and that dog just doesn't like it, runs over, like, rah, 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 you know?
Yeah. Like that's, come on.
Yeah. Like I'm sorry they're disturbing your sleep. Go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right? Like those are like unreasonable things that they start setting boundaries with.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it. I mean, it's not anything too much crazier than that.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you like for a dog like that, like the couch thing, for instance, like if you let one thing slide, is it kind of snowball for
Depends
that dog?
what the thing is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that the dog literally being on the couch is a problem.
Yeah.
Right? It's not. It's the fact that when you ask the dog to get off, it's regardless what, that dog will not get off if you ask them to. The dog just will not, or pick any number of things.
Yeah, whatever.
If you want it to get out of the kitchen, right? Or, you know, come in from the backyard or whatever. It's the dog only does things that the dog wants to do on the dog's terms.
Yeah.
Right? So let's say you never address the couch thing, right? You never need to get the dog off the couch, but the dog is 100% compliant everywhere else. That will solve the issue as well.
Yep.
It's just you could pick easy things to work on. Like we know the dog won't get off the couch if we ask them to. So let's use that as our opportunity to address this.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So that's that one.
Like that one.
Moving on here. I'm going to skip one. We'll end with it. And then we'll go to these ones. Watch movies 1, 2, 3 said, well, in my opinion, and we all have our opinion, I think a lot of people use e-collar to train things. I think you're supposed to use the collar after the dog knows the behavior. I don't train a sit with an e-collar, right? And we kind of went back and forth a few times on this, but in a nutshell, my issue with this comment was that why can't you use an e-collar to train things?
Right.
Negative reinforcement is a reinforcement utilizing an aversive that its sole intent is to teach things, right? So we could have the debate of should you go right to trying to teach things with an e-collar or with negative reinforcement. Personally, I don't have an issue with it if you want to do it that way. I think that if anything, it's depending on the dog that we're working with. If we have a dog that's a little bit more of that pushy kind of dominant dog, getting back to the whole issue that they're having is they only do things on their terms. So if you want to teach everything in this like positive reinforcement way because you feel like it's nicer, you're teaching tricks, but you're never achieving, like the dog's still just doing it because they want to do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And at some point, yeah, you could say, well, I'll hold them accountable for it eventually, right? But it's like, why not just make sure that they understand they have to do it right off the rip?
Right.
I don't know. I see no issue with that. And I think some trainers, and I'm not talking about watch movies 1, 2, 3 in this, obviously. But I think some trainers just get so fucking like it's like an ego thing of like, we have to teach everything in this positive fashion, right? It's like, you can, but like, look at what's the dog here for? What's the dog going to benefit from? And sometimes these dogs can benefit from just being knocked down a couple of notches on the fucking the totem pole. You know what I mean? And that's not to say we have to be super mean to them and all those types of things, but there's a way to train things and teach things in a way where the dog is learning immediately. You just have to listen to me. You just have to listen to me. And you could do that in a way that, again, that's not cruel or not being overly harsh on them, but they are still learning. You just have to listen to me still. And you could always make it more fun later. And then in other cases, we get dogs that come in and they're not coming in for issues like that. Let's teach it as fun as possible. You know what I mean? So this is where you get into kind of the art side of things. Like, it's not just about teaching the dog to sit. It's about this was the biggest debate we had with Dale McCluskey, if you recall, right? His whole thing was with the treats and all this, like, you're creating this false perception of control because you're getting the dog sitting, downing, staying, but they are still being used, the selfish child example, right? They're still being controlling or selfish. They're being compliant to you, but they're not being compliant to you for the right reasons. And my pushback on that was, if the dog understands that it is non-negotiable, you still have to do it, that alleviates that problem. That is the key with obedience training with behavioral issues, is the dog learning that you are in control of things. It's not about the sit, the down, the bed, the stay. Yeah. So that's my thing on this one is I don't see any reason at all to use an e-collar to train things. Piggybacking off of that, Angelina commented and said, to me, e-collars and prong collars to an extent shouldn't be sold over the counter and should only be sold through a trainer, like a doctor giving a prescription if they deem that appropriate. Again, I disagree. I don't think it's that hard of a fucking tool to use. I don't think it requires a ridiculous amount of skill to use. I think that the vast majority of people out there, the vast majority of owners that would go and buy an e-collar themselves, if anything, are probably hesitant to use the collar. They're not going to be over shocking the dog all the time. Yeah. Right? If anything, they're going to be hesitant. I remember when I bought my first e-collar, this is when I was training with Vera. I was working with a couple different trainers at the times before I was a dog trainer, right? And I was like, man, I really want to. I started hearing about these e-collars. I was like, man, I want to kind of try to figure this out and do off-leash training and this and that. And I remember I went to the store. I bought an e-collar from Pet Supplies Plus around the corner from where I lived, and it was like $120 like pet safe one or something like that. And I remember I went home and I put it on Vera and I went for a walk and I was like, all right, I'm going to start walking with her and I'm going to use this e-collar like I would use the leash, right? I looked up a couple videos and stuff on it. And I remember I went and I hit it one time and she was like, whoa, kind of jumped a little bit. And I was like, fuck this. And I took the thing back and I took it off and I took it back to the store and I returned it.
Oh, damn. I didn't know that.
Took it back to the store and returned it. I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing with this thing. Now, a part of me was extra like, I just want to make sure that I do it right. It wasn't like I was like, oh, I'm going to fuck anything up or create any problems or this or that. I was just like, I know I'm going to start working with somebody that's going to teach me how to use this anyways. I might as well just wait, which we have a lot of clients do as well. They try to buy one and then they maybe try to use it once or twice. And they're like, we know we're going to do training, so let's just wait until then. But I literally have clients tell me all the time. They send me emails. They comment on social media and stuff like that. And they say, I trained my dog with an e-collar using your videos, right? Or using whatever it may be. They didn't need to go hire a trainer to do it. If anything, many of them just needed their dog to stop fucking jumping, right? I fully support people doing that. Same with prong collars. This person said the same thing with prong collars. I fully support people buying a prong collar and doing nothing but just attaching the leash to it and going for a walk. Even if it helps the pulling this much, makes it better for you, fuck yeah. Yeah. No issue with that. And the other side of the conversation is just like, I don't think people realize how fucking hard it is to screw something up with a prong collar or e-collar. I don't think people realize how hard it is. Yeah. Like you have to be so unbelievably horrendously cruel of a person in order to do that. And then get back to, it's not the tool on the dog, it's the tool on the other end of the leash, right? Like, and at that point, that is just a serious person problem that whether they had an e-collar or a prong collar, they're going to be doing something real fucking assholery.
Yeah.
You know?
100%.
So I don't support them being banned at all. I don't support them being something you have to go through a trainer to get. Frankly, I think half these trainers, we've said this before, like there's no fucking like consistency as far as trainers being like, we all use it exactly the same way. And there's this like staple way to do it. Right. So no, I don't agree with that.
Yeah. Well, I think you made a great point too. It's like some people just have one problem. It's like the dog jumps up. And that's all they need it for.
Yeah.
You know, they're not trying to have like a completely trained dog. They just need the dog to stop doing one thing.
Yeah. And let's say somebody buys one and it's just not working, right? It's just not working for them. People aren't going to keep using it. They're going to realize very quickly, this tool isn't working to achieve the thing that I'm trying to achieve. So I'm just going to stop using it. And even more so many people buy it and they just use the fucking tone setting anyways. They never use the stim, right? We hear that more than anything also. So, yeah, that's my take on that. All right, next one. I think this is the last one here. Lindsay. Lindsay said, first all, love your channel. Thanks.
Thank you.
I do have a couple questions, but I'll explain why so you understand a bit better. It's a bit long. Sorry.
It's okay.
Due to the law in the UK, one of my dogs has to wear a muzzle. He was a pup when the XL bully ban came in. He's not an XL bully, but he matches some of the criteria. Anyway, due to the situation, training has been quite challenging. He can't have anything plastic or rubber toy-wise because he'll literally eat them even when supervised. We have a 6-foot rope frame that he loves, but we're now not allowed to use it because a neighbor put in a complaint. He does get vocal when he uses it. And in regards to socialization, 1, limited to on leash, 2, stigma. He's not aggressive, but gets overexcited because he wants to say hello to everyone and everything, which is unfortunately rarely reciprocated because of his size. Anyone that comes to my house is fine with him, but in public, he doesn't get the same response. So I get nervous now because he isn't doing anything wrong. He's just been neutered, so he's been dealing with being isolated at the moment. But obviously, once he's fully healed, I'll be starting gently with walking again. It can be very gradual because resting and being calm are not his strong point because he's young. In the garden, he already has a pond and sandpit area. Any suggestions on what I could replace his ropes with? In regards to outside, I've already made a brief plan on sitting in public with him in different locations to practice doing nothing. How do I keep him calm when walking past other dogs? Using treats for distraction can be difficult because of his muzzle, and he's 12 months, so he's 1 year.
Yeah.
So not sure an e-collar would be appropriate. He's an amazing boy, but he's also stronger than my other dogs, so he could pull hard. Not in a bad way, just that he thinks everyone is his friend. I keep our distance from everyone right now because there's been a few situations where smaller dogs have snapped at him when he's just stood near them, and we have our own small dog, so it can get confusing for him because they play fine together. It's a loaded comment there.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they had, I don't know all the details on it, but they did outlaw XL bullies.
Yeah, like the entire country.
The UK. Yeah.
Wow.
Just like they were trying to outlaw e-collars, you know.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's do the same thing. Let's break through this a couple things at a time, right? So starting off here, she outlines, obviously, in the UK, he has to wear a muzzle because he matches some of the criteria of an XL bully. So whatever. Listen, I mean, we could say, oh, this sucks, whatever, poor dog all day long, but he's got to wear a muzzle in public.
Yeah.
Plenty of dogs wear a muzzle in public. He's going to be fine, right?
Yeah.
Due to the situation, training has been challenging. He can't have anything plastic or rubber toy-wise because he'll literally eat it even when supervised. So you have a dog that is a toy destroyer.
Yeah.
I've got 2 dogs that are big-time toy destroyers. And you know what I do? I give them toys they can't destroy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so Vera is the biggest culprit of it. She can't have anything plush or like rubbery or plastic or anything. It'll get shredded to pieces, right?
Okay.
So I give her, people give me shit over this one all the time. They say they're toxic, whatever. They're not. Nylabone Durachews. You get the heavy-duty Nylabone Durachews. She will sit there and chew on that motherfucker all day long. She's a monster chewer, and they last quite a while, I think, right?
Yeah.
Those are great toys for in the house. We will do deer antlers, and we will do like marrow bones, right? Those 3, she chews on them all day, keeps herself nice and entertained and satiated with it. And, you know, once they dwindle down too much, I throw them away, right?
Yep.
So replace all the toys that you wouldn't give them with those types of things.
Yeah.
Right? Chewing is a great activity for dogs like this, right? They fucking love it. They could really satiate a lot of urges by sitting there chewing on things, right? So give them things like that, right? She had a 6-foot rope frame that he loves, but we're not allowed to use it because the neighbor put in a complaint. I don't know exactly what this 6-foot rope frame is, but I'm assuming what it is like a flirt pole or whatever they call a spring pole, right?
Yeah.
So basically, a lot of these pit bulls love you hang a rope from like a tree or something, and they jump up and grab that thing and fucking shake it and go crazy.
What you call it again?
It's a 6-foot rope frame. I'm not guessing that you're gonna really find much.
No.
Yeah. So okay, so she said she can't use it because a neighbor put in a complaint because he gets vocal when he uses it. So my question there was, and I said this in the comment section, is it illegal for your dog to chew on a fucking rope, have fun and thrash around on a rope frame, right? Or did this person just complain and you're scared that you're going to get in trouble for it, right? I would find that out right away because if it is not illegal for your dog to do that and they can't clearly tell you why it's illegal, kick rocks, bro.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
my dog likes doing this. I'm going to let him keep doing this.
Yeah.
Right? So, whatever. Let's say it's illegal to use the 6-foot rope frame. Can you tug with your dog? I mean, these are legit questions, right? Figure out, can you tug with your dog? If it is not illegal, start playing tug with your dog. I'm assuming that's something that he would really like doing as well, right?
Yeah.
Can your dog chase a ball? Vera loves chasing a ball, right? I think that is a great way to be able to burn off energy with your dog then at that point, right? Socialization, right? Limited to on leash and stigma, right? So limited to on leash meaning her dog needs to be literally on a leash, probably 6-foot leash, right?
Yeah.
And the stigma of the XL bully, right? So don't worry about socializing him in public, right? It sounds like you have big issues with this dog of impulse control out in public. The dog pulls on a leash repeatedly, and you don't have control over him. So you need to work on that side of things, right? I think a lot of people look at, they have a dog like this, and the dog is young and rambunctious and wild and like all that kind of stuff. And they're like, I got to exercise my dog. I got to provide more outlets for my dog because that's what people preach is in order to solve problems, you got to have a tired dog, which is bullshit.
Yeah.
Right? Solve the problems, right? Get these things under control. I just did a lesson with a client the other day. That same deal. They were walking this dog constantly, playing ball with this dog constantly, things like that, because the dog was just an absolute psychopath in the house. And they were so concerned. They were like, okay, well, this is great. You know, the training clearly went well, but like, you know, we struggle sometimes being able to get enough energy out of him. I was like, you don't need to.
Yeah.
A lot of times when you have a dog that's so wild in the home or out and about, we look at it as an energy issue, but it's not an energy issue. It's an impulse control issue. Right? And if you look at what is the difference to me is one situation, the dog is just kind of going crazy and just exerting energy solely because it has energy. So it might be just tearing around doing zoomies. It's not even singling in on any particular thing. They're just antsy in the house, right? They're constantly pacing, stuff like that. The other is the dog is constantly displaying intense bursts of energy towards things that they want to get to. So it's like they go from 0 to 60 because it's like there was a squirrel there. And the child is running around the house, right? And somebody's at the front door and they saw another dog out on the walk and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's happening so constantly that it's like, oh my God, this dog has a ton of fucking energy.
Yeah.
But it's not an energy issue. It's the dog has no impulse control around those things. So you solve the impulse control issue and then you start realizing the dog is just calm because they didn't have a ridiculous amount of energy. They maybe had some, but like a moderate amount of energy.
Yeah.
They just couldn't control their impulses when they saw things they liked. And that was displayed in bursts of energy.
Right.
Right? So this dog may be the same fucking thing. You start getting all these issues on the walk under control. You fix the leash walking. You make sure he ignores people and dogs out on the walk, right? You make sure he's not jumping in the house. You know, any of those types of things. You may find you don't need to give him all of these toy outlets in order for him to calm down. He just becomes a more well-mannered version of himself.
Yep.
So that is a huge one that I'm actually glad that I remembered that from that lesson because I was like, yeah, impulse control versus energy. I want to talk about that, you know, because that's a key. So many people, they're struggling with impulse control. They're not struggling with exercise or energy. And that's why exercising your dog constantly doesn't work to solve these issues.
Yeah. It's like the complete opposite of that German Shepherd we've been talking about.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. That dog had energy, right? He had impulse control also, right?
Yeah.
He didn't have impulse control issues. He practiced very good impulse control, right? But he just had a ton of fucking energy.
Yeah.
Ton of fucking energy.
But in that situation, you could harness it,
Yes.
you know?
Exactly.
And that's the key.
So that's it. 12 months. She's concerned using e-collars is 12 months. This is my problem with like when you start saying things like, oh, you shouldn't use e-collars to teach things, and prongs and e-collars shouldn't be sold over the counter, and like all that kind of stuff. Because it paints this false picture of like an e-collar is probably going to be this person's saving fucking grace.
Yeah.
Right? But because she's so scared because everybody's making it seem like you're going to destroy your dog if you use the e-collar wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Or you use it too young or whatever it may be. They're hesitating on getting their dog's behavior under control when in actuality, you just need to get your dog's behavior under control.
Yeah. Yeah, before like we started working together, I heard that all the time. You know, it's like, oh, if you use it wrong, you're going to shut your dog down. He'll never be the same again. And blah, blah, blah. And it's like, now that I see everything, I'm like, man, dude, like, it's like an old, what do they call them? Old wives' tales. You know?
Yeah.
That's kind of like what it is.
Yep. It is. So that's it. So those were some interesting comments, I thought. Make some content out of. Sorry for the unsolicited advice.
Yeah. Don't take our unsolicited advice.
But that's all I got for you guys.
Cool. Yeah, you got to get going anyway, right?
I got to hit the road. All right, guys.
Cool.
Catch you on the next one.
We'll see you.